Hello and welcome folks to build number 9 of Special Projects Pack number 6, the final day already of Pack 6. Of course this is a car that had to be coming, a racing version of the Alfa Romeo 8C. If I recall correctly, I think the Alfa 8C GTA build was the first special project I did in GT7, still one of my personal favourites. It surprises me to no end that, at least as far as I know, nobody's done a racing version of the Alfa 8C in real life. I mean, if there are literally privateer team versions of stuff like the Zonda, it seems weird to me that nobody would have done that with this car, given the Maserati underpinnings, Alfa Romeo's history. It seems prime for it, but unfortunately not. I have, of course, put a link to the livery design from this particular player. There are a ton of different racing liveries for the 8C, so you don't have to go for this one. I just like the way this one looks. And as you can see, as far as the numbers, although I'm calling it the GT3, because it's, you know, a good-looking name and it has that general vibe, it's actually more of an Alfa Romeo 8C LM race car, in effect, like a Gran Turismo original, because as you can see, 600 horses, 1200 kilos, pretty nice numbers, just over 700 points, so potentially quite useful for racing as well. But that doesn't necessarily fall into any actual GT3 regulations. Maybe it can if you change some numbers, but that's not strictly what I'm going for. So it's a bit of a hybrid between GT3 and LM. As far as the actual upgrades though, it's a relatively simple one, because the power isn't crazy, of course. We've gone for the Stage 1 weight. As far as Club Sports, you actually don't need to buy the high lift cams, because I purchased these to test it, and then I put the Ultimate Section cams instead, so you don't need to buy that one. We've got the Stage 2 weight, of course, power restrictor and ballast as well. For the semi-racing, we've got the fully customised ECU and the racing crank, the fully customised diff, and the Stage 3 weight. I have not done the rigidity on this one, because as you can see it lowers the points a little bit. If you want to go for it, if you personally find it to benefit your cars, then of course give it a try. To me it seems like a bit of a waste of cash in this case. As far as the racing stuff, of course we have the air filter, silencer, manifold, pads and discs. Like I've said before, doesn't really matter too much which discs you go for, as long as they are racing or above. So drilled, slotted or carbon ceramics in the extreme section. Although the ceramics are, of course, more expensive. We've got the racing clutch and flywheel, suspension, transmission, and as usual with my race car builds, racing hards. Briefly, because of course if you build a car to be good on softs, and then have to use hards, it might not be as good. Whereas if you build a car to be good on hards, then it will be even better on softs. For the extreme stuff, like I said, you could go for these if you want to, and then as far as the ultimate section, we've got the carbon prop shaft, and like I said, the high lift cams in particular, and it actually rounds out really nicely to 600 horsepower. I didn't even have to restrict the power at all to get it nicely rounded off to that. And if nothing else, the numbers look good. 600 horses, 1200 kilos, there's something nice and symmetrical about that. So of course we have the hard tyres fitted. For the suspension, we've got the ride height a bit lower on the front, 97 to 110 on the rear, 5 on anti-roll, 36 for compression, 44 for expansion. Quite a high frequency compared to stock, 3.4, 3 degrees of camber on the front and the back. And as far as toe, we've got toe 10 in on the rear, toe 10 out on the front. As far as the diff, I will say I had to kind of come in and out of the tuning and retest the car a number of times on this particular one to find what I personally liked, because it can be a bit of a twitchy car, a bit more than you'd expect actually, especially given how good the Gran Turismo is, and it's essentially a Gran Turismo underneath. So I've gone for 1010, as you can see. As far as the transmission, I've gone for a fairly simple auto setting of 300 kilometers an hour, which is up around the 190 mile an hour region, which, although it could probably do a little bit more than that, is about right for a car like this. As far as the ballast, I've added 28 kilos. You don't necessarily have to add any if you just want it to be as light as possible, but I wanted to utilise that to round it off to 1200, and also I've put it 30 toward the front. It keeps it technically as a 50-50 split, but it's certainly on the more forward end of the 50-50, so about as close to being like a front-heavy car as it can be. We've got the ECU untouched, of course. As far as the downforce, I'm running a high aero build, so much more focused on handling and grip. And as far as the other stuff here, of course, you can see everything which we already fitted. So all that remains, as usual, is to jump out to the track and show you what it can do in practice. Now, like I said, this build required a little bit more fettling to get it to where I wanted it to be. I will say the 8C is never a car, at least in my experience, which is going to blow the doors off of everything else. Because of course Alfa Romeo doesn't tend to build cars like that. They build cars in the way that I like cars to be built, which is make them enjoyable first, charismatic, passionate, you know, beautiful, and then they worry about competition later. And more often than not, it kind of works for them, because some of their race cars are pretty iconic. This one, like I said, I think it's so strange that there isn't any real-world racing counterpart, but it makes such a good-looking race car. It's a lot of fun to use, and if nothing else, being so close to that 700-point region, I know some of you like to use these builds for like cash grinding in the Le Mans 700-point event. You could certainly try it out for that, maybe reduce the power a little bit or add a little bit more weight. Since weight doesn't matter too much at Le Mans, it's more of a high-speed track. So if you want to use it and change it up in some way, of course I hope you enjoy it, or if you just use it as is and give it a try, I hope you enjoy it that way too. But of course, that's it overall for this build. Only one remains in pack number 6. I hope you've enjoyed the journey, of course, and I'll see you later on today with that one. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.